Hi, this is Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief of The Contrarian. We're delighted to have back Mitch Landrieu, the former mayor of New Orleans and the former infrastructure czar. Mitch, welcome back.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
You have published a report that comes out of your Working People's Project. What was that project, and what did you find in putting together this really fascinating report, this deep dive into American workers?
Well, as everybody, painfully recalls, we got our head handed to us in the last set of elections that put Donald Trump back in the White House, notwithstanding the fact that he was for himself, he was for hurting his perceived enemies and enriching his friends. And, we had to ask ourselves, why we lost that race. And one of the clear reasons why we lost is because, not to be too simple, but people that used to vote for us stopped voting for us. And that was primarily the working class folks. It was the first time in, I think, 50 years we lost people that made less than $50,000. And that was just part of a trend. So I'm kind of a simple person. I was like, well, listen, if they used to vote for us and they didn't, why don't we go ask them why? And that was what the Working Class Project was about. So we set about working really hard over the last 9 months, crisscrossing the country. We went to 21 states. We did a massive amount of focus groups. We did longitudinal surveys. We did media consumption surveys. We asked people every which way you could. What are you listening to? What are you thinking about? What are you being influenced by? And what's really kind of juicing you and moving you one way or the other? And the message was really pretty clear, although it was really painful to hear. They didn't, at the time that we've been going through, they were like, we don't know what Democrats stand for. We don't really think you focused on the things that matter to us. And the things that mattered to this cohort of voters, very important cohort of voters that both sides need to win, basically said, listen, I gotta make my rent. I can't support my family. I've got too much pressure on me because I can't take care of my kids. You guys told me that if I went to work, I'd make a living wage where I could make sure that my kids did better than I'm doing right now. And I feel left out and left behind. And I just don't think everything's fair. I don't think the immigration system's fair for me because although I know that we're a nation of immigrants, other people jumped in front of me and they're getting stuff that I don't even get. I don't think it's fair for the top 1% to get a tax break when I've got to pay more taxes than somebody, that's making $1 billion. It doesn't make sense to me that you're threatening my health care and my food stamps when, other people are walking away scot-free. And so, the message that we took from this and the message that we sent out to all the candidates and the one that was resoundingly successful on Tuesday night was, we see you, we hear you, and we're going to pay attention to the things that matter to you most, and that's pocketbook issues. So Tuesday night, Democrats have a lot to really, really be proud of. The point of this was we had to demonstrate that we could win. We could win all across the country. We could win with people that call themselves progressives. We could win with people that call themselves moderate. It was of no never mind because the thing that tied all of these races together was focusing on the things that these folks said they wanted you to focus on, which was their ability to have the American dream. And they spoke very loudly. And I think that we have a lot to build on, although we still have a long way to go.
Absolutely. In addition to telling you what they wanted to hear, did they tell you how they wanted to hear,
Yeah.
how they hear Democrats communicating to them? And what did you learn from that?
Well, this was really true. It was, listen, we were asking them about everybody. We weren't just asking them about us. We were trying to learn from them about how we should speak to them. But, they don't really, they think that Washington is broken. And I mean, I know that seems like a very obvious thing to see right now, given the fact that the government shut down and, we can't even get food on the table and we can't get from here to there by train or plane or car. And they want things to work for them better, but they want people not to talk down to them. They're very smart. They're called low information voters, but that's BS. They're not. They're very dialed in. They may not speak about issues the way that the folks at the United Nations speak about it, but they speak about it the way folks speak about it at the county diner, and at the hardware store, or, wherever you happen to be traversing, the street, whether it's in the carpool line or whether it's at the store or whether it's at the cleaners, or whether it's at the auto repair shop, wherever, you find yourself. They want people who are authentic. that are just going to kind of speak real plain about the things that matter to them and what matters to them most. It's not the exclusive thing. They care about, a woman's right to choose. They care about civil rights. They care about tax policy. They care about all of that stuff. But what they care about most, and they can't really concentrate on anything else, is they can't make ends meet. And so when
Right.
you're talking to folks that are getting up early and staying up late, and they're the ones that are actually carrying the burden of America on their shoulder, they need to be able to the way they say it, they can't just live from paycheck to paycheck. And they're just feeling really strung out and they're feeling like nobody's focused on their issues. And so that's what they want. And they want to talk to somebody that looks like them, sounds like them, lives in their neighborhood, and talks about issues that matter to them the most. Authenticity was really the coin of the realm. And of course, you saw this play out. You saw it in New Jersey with Mikey Sherrill, who, as you know, has a great national security background, but she's a mom of 4 kids. She went to the Naval Academy, but she also served in Congress. She is a Jersey girl through and through. You saw it with Abigail Spanberger in Virginia, where she was speaking directly to the issues. Again, national security background, but she was a mom. She had been out there working for a long, long time, and she spoke in very, simple, clear terms in ways that the people of Virginia felt very, very familiar. Her number one playing ad was about finding people where they are and with people that had to get up every day and go do their hard work. You saw it with Mamdani in New York,
Yeah,
notwithstanding all the falderall about whether he's a social democrat or not a social democrat or what he might be. The coin of the realm in that race was talking to people about how they make their lives easier with making sure that their rent is limited, make sure that they can get to and from work in an easy and inexpensive time, talking about daycare, which is what everybody in America is talking about right now, especially women in the workforce who are like, I can't go to work if I don't have anywhere, for my kids to be safe
right.
while I'm doing this. So that is the one thing that cut across every race in America. And by the way, Democrats won them all. We won in
Yes,
Georgia, we won in Mississippi, we won in California, we won in Virginia. Listen to the Democrats out there who are like kind of hand wringing. Listen, damn it, we won. We won.
yes,
Won big.
yes.
It feels like so. Feel good about that. And then after you feel good about it, stop and let's get back to work. But one thing we've demonstrated when you push back on Donald Trump, when you push back on his policies, when you don't try to appease him, when you muscle up, right? We're going to win. And I think we
Absolutely.
demonstrated that on Tuesday. So we just got to get back to work and we've got more to do, but we've got some blue skies ahead for us if we keep doing, what we did last week.
I think what you said is something so important. Too often, the pundits and the media, and maybe even some Democrats, get into this fight about ideology. Who's left? Who's more left than somebody else? I want that guy to be less left. What matters is what people hear from the politicians. And you're right, Mamdani was all about affordability, and he got people incredibly engaged. And he was the right candidate for New York City, just like Abigail Spanberger, the right candidate for
Well, I
Virginia.
suppose one of the views could be that they're all very different people. And
Yeah,
that if Democrats were silly enough to let, the other side pull us apart by saying someone's in the middle, someone's on the right, someone's on the left, that's just foolish. Look, we're one team, one fight. The one thing that they all had in common is they were focused on working folks and the issues that made their lives better. And they did not get pulled off track on other issues that are somewhat important, and they're very important to small groups of people. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't be talked about. All I'm saying is the voters that we talked to said, that's all fine. You can talk about all that stuff, but just talk about it 10% of the time. I need you
yeah.
focused on my stuff 80% of the time because it's 80% of what all of us need all the time. And what Democrats need to learn how to do is to win. So this isn't really about ideology, although it's not bereft of ideology, but it really is about staying focused and winning. Winning is important. If you don't win, you do not have the power to impact people's lives. So I would
Boy,
just
is that right.
Democrats, while you sit around and start thinking about, well, what's the difference between Mandami and Spanberger and Sherrill and blah, blah, blah. I promise you that they have much, much more in common than they do with anything that
Absolutely.
Donald Trump has said or done in his entire life, or what JD Vance has done, or what he's trying to do. The gulf could not be wider, and it couldn't be clearer which direction Americans want to go. And they have had enough of Donald Trump's betrayal. Donald Trump told them
Absolutely.
when he came into office that he was going to reduce their cost. And what he has done instead, as predicted, is put himself first, not America first. He went after his enemies, as he would said. He and his family rich, and he spent time on a $300 million ballroom, a $200 million plane for Christy Nome, and he's cutting food, programs for people in America. I mean, look, these folks in America, they might have been born at night, but they weren't born last night. And they're looking at this going, you know what? That is not, what we put into office. And they feel very upset about that. And to answer there was a serious question after this last election that all the pundits were asking, oh my God, is this a permanent shift? Can you get people back? It turns out that voters are like, you know what? We're the boss. We get to decide what is important to
Right.
us. We're going to vote for you because you work for me. We don't work
Yeah.
for you. And if you don't do what we ask you to do, guess what? We're going to get somebody else to do it because we don't wear red or we don't wear blue. We just wear what's good for us. And I
Yeah.
think that that's a very important lesson for our candidates to remember. So, good candidate recruitment, authentic candidates, a good message that finds people where they are. And listen, you have to run from the area that you're from. So, the good
Yeah.
people of New York chose Mamdani, but the good people of Virginia chose Abigail, and the good people of New Jersey. And all of a sudden, guess what? We got a big tent, we got a lot of talent, and we have people focused on the things that matter the most. And that is a winning formula. So if you like winning, Democrats, keep doing the thing that helps succeed. And quit wringing your hands. Just shut the hell up. Let's kind of get after it with each other and stay, one team, one fight. And let's be positive. We got a lot of blue sky in front of us, but it's going to be hard. It's not
Yeah.
something we can turn overnight, but we've seen a roadmap to success and we ought to follow it.
One thing that really struck me, they were doing, of course, a lot of, voter on the street interviews, is how often that ballroom came up. And I think corruption and the sense that Donald Trump and his rich friends are out for them gives Democrats this opening if they can run through it to make that case. It seems that that is precisely the contrast Democrats need to put up. Do you want the guy with the golden ballroom or you want the people who are fighting to keep your health care affordable? And that seems to be like a
Well,
perfect contrast.
somebody wonderful said when somebody shows you or tells you who they are, you should believe them. And Donald Trump has done that. And he snubbed his nose at the people of America, basically said, let him eat cake. I mean, it's startling to see that he abused his power by just tearing down the East Wing the way he did, and then insisting that corporate donors pay $300 million for a ballroom while you're shutting down the government, while you won't feed people, and all because you want to give the richest 1% a tax break and not give health care to people in America. Now, listen, that's an 80%, position. People in
Yep.
America really like the fact that they have health care and that they don't get cut off for and their kids because they had pre-existing conditions or they can move, from employer to employer, what they call portability. Americans have gotten to the point of thinking, healthcare really is a right. It's just not a privilege. And listen, in our focus groups, some of the most ardent Trump supporters could not believe that this president and Mike Johnson and Congress were going to cut their health care and take
Mm,
away the protection for their special needs kids to give a tax cut to the 1%. Now, to be clear, this group is not against wealthy people. They actually want to be wealthy. But what
right.
they are against is a system that treats them unfairly and gives an unfair advantage to other folks and leaves them behind. They are not for that. And the same thing is true with immigration. They are absolutely in favor of securing the border and making sure that we take all the bad guys that are in part of all the gangs that are doing bad things to bad people and getting them out of here. But they're not for taking grandma and throwing her up against the wall
Exactly.
or going into a daycare center and taking the daycare workers or taking your neighbor who's gardening and throwing her in a hole. They're not for that. And they feel like the president has really abused his power. And so, both of these things can be true where you focus on Donald Trump's evisceration of democracy, but at the same time, while you're trying to save that, make sure people are saving dollars in their daily life and make sure that the promise that we made to each other, that we are all part of the American dream, that we have a covenant with each other, that if we go to work and we work hard, our kids are going to have an opportunity to have a better life than we did. That dream feels gone to a lot of people, and they are insisting that America get her mojo back. And the people that respond to that, I think the folks that are voting are going to respond very well as they did this week. And this wasn't just a little bit of a whooping. This was a
Yeah.
this was a serious whooping across
Yes.
the country. And so
Right.
I feel like what we learned in the Working Class Project was accurate. I feel like the folks that picked up the research that we did and used it succeeded.
Yep.
I like to say to people, if you did it and it worked, try it again because
Yeah.
that's a good way to do it. And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, winning is everything. So focus on what we have in common. Stay away from letting them tear us apart. We're one team, one fight, and we're gonna beat these guys. Absolutely.
Absolutely. One other thing that I think you embody and really came across in many of these races where Democrats did so well is they really want someone who's going to fight for them. It's a lot of this, none of this, kind of wishy-washiness, none of this DC talk, none of this, we want to cut some deal with the Republicans. There's a certain energy that people want. They want a champion. They want someone to fight for them because they feel like they've been given a raw deal.
Well, I think that Donald Trump's election was traumatic for a lot of people because he basically decided that he was going to be a king. And this is a man who has been very abusive with the power that the American people gave him. I don't really think that folks don't want the president to be powerful, but they want him to use the power to help people, to lift them up, not to push them down, to bring people together, not to separate them, not to throw people in a hole, not to eviscerate the Constitution by demeaning the judiciary or Congress or et cetera, et cetera. But in anything that this guy has touched, he has gone overboard, he's been abusive, and he obviously doesn't care about the people. Now, here's the thing about running for office. Talk is cheap. Once you get in office, you have to do something. And the things that you do, people will see. So if you just go look at the things that Donald Trump has done, regular, really smart American citizens are going, that's not what I voted for. That doesn't
Right.
make any sense to me what he's doing. That's not what he said. And even a guy who lies as much as he does, they find it kind of weird that he's being so patently obvious in his disdain for the people that actually voted for him. And these people, I'm
Absolutely.
telling you, we call them low information voters. These are very smart voters. They have a lot of common sense. They're the ones who make the world go round. And people absolutely want somebody to fight back. And the reason it's so important right now is because Donald Trump has basically said to us, he is going to take your lunch money if you don't,
Yeah.
unless you stop him. He will not stop. This man will not stop. He doesn't see any barriers unless you stand up to him. And when you stand up to him, whether it's through the
Right.
courts or whether it's at the ballot box, then you push him back. But he's not stopping unless you do it. So therefore, the voters go, okay, great. Then we need people who are willing to fight. If you don't want to fight, go sit on the bench. This guy requires you, to punch back. And that's what the Democrats
Absolutely.
did. And we did it well. And we should just kind of take a moment, pat ourselves on the back, and say, that was good. Now we got to do it again. Let's
Yeah.
get back out and keep working at it. And if we do, I think we're going to meet with success as we should, because we will then be representing, the hopes and the values and the dreams of the American people.
Last thing that I noticed, and it was borne out actually, New York Times had a story about it, that Democrats actually won back some Trump voters. And they won in areas like in Southwest Virginia, which is not exactly a hotbed of progressivism. It's the sense you have to show up. You have to keep trying with voters. You may not win them all, but you're going to win some of them. And that's going to lead to some really big wins in a state like Virginia.
I would really encourage my fellow Americans to have a better imagination about their fellow Americans. In other words, we get stuck thinking red versus blue. People are very complicated in many
Yeah.
ways, meaning we have lots of no two people are the same. Everybody has a lot of thoughts in their mind, and they don't all come out the same way in terms of how people process it. The one thing that they all think is, if you don't come see me, if you don't come talk to me, if you don't come ask me, I find that disrespectful, so that I can't be for you. And sometimes people, politicians particularly, will go, oh, that's a red county, I'm not going there. Well, that's just really foolish. And the reason is because there are people that live in that county that have voted and will vote. But if you don't go see them, they're much less likely to be for you. So I'm I'm in a red state. I won state
Yep,
twice. You got to go everywhere. You got to see everybody because when you do the math, if you go pull a couple of votes out of a red precinct, then you have to get fewer votes in the blue precinct that you go to. And when you add it all up,
absolutely.
that's the difference between winning and losing. And so the other thing is people just really appreciate you coming and talk to them. And you should,
Exactly.
because they have a lot to
Exactly.
tell you. And even, let me say, even if you're not going to get their votes, you can learn a lot from people about why they tell you no, and then you can get better. But ignoring people, that's a pretty good prescription for failure. So, I encourage
Absolutely.
people not to do that.
And it's also what makes the difference between winning by 5 points and winning by 15 points.
Amen. Or
And
better yet, it's by winning by one vote rather than losing by one. And I have won, I
exactly.
have been, listen, I had an election, my first election, I won by 35 votes that I am sure that I got on election day because I got up early in the morning and I did not go to bed until the polls closed. And I learned that lesson and I have never, ever forgotten it. You got to, every
Absolutely.
counts. And listen, every vote, this is true without being Pollyannish about it, every vote is equally important
Yeah,
and critically important, I might add as well. And when you don't treat voters like that, they can feel it and they can justifiably say, "You never came to see me. You never asked." The greatest sin in politics, not asking.
absolutely.
Don't do
And
that.
and I will close on this. What was so gratifying to see, whether it was Mondami or whether it was Mikey Sherrill or whether it was um, Abigail Spanberger, is when they got elected, they say, I'm going to be a governor, a mayor for everybody,
Yeah.
whether you voted for me or not. And that was so refreshing because Donald Trump has never gotten this through his head that he's the president of everybody. It's just his
No,
little people, his donors.
that's a really wonderful thing that you've observed because I have a strong opinion about this, I think that I'm correct. That really in the next couple years, because the nation has been so divided and we're kind of just really tired of going to Thanksgiving dinner or wherever we go and not being able to talk to our family members, that people are going to want at some point in time for us to figure out how to work better together, right? And so what the big fight is about now is groups of people on the left and the right who want to divide us and believe that you can win, a zero sum game, and the other side of it is people on both sides of the aisle who want to find a way to find common ground and to get together and to move us forward. And I think there is an element on both sides, I might say, that believe that division wins. I believe that addition wins. And I think that the American people at some point in time are going to want to go, look, I feel very strongly about stuff, but we got to figure out how to solve a problem and not just argue about it because there are real consequences to not being able to get to yes. And
Absolutely.
I think they're going to be more demanding of elected officials and people who can actually do it. They want people who are going to fight hard for them, but they clearly want people who are going to solve day-to-day problems and not just win ideological arguments.
Oh boy, is that true. And they don't really care who keeps their health care costs down. They're going to vote for the guy or the gal who did, regardless whether it's a D or an R. Mitch, your work has been so important and so interesting. We're going to have you back, and hopefully, they won't have amnesia and forget this lesson in a
That's all
week
right.
or a month because they're going to need it for the next 12 months. So, thank you so much for
I
joining us.
appreciate it. Just forgetting winning is everything, and we won, so let's go do it again.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.